Right. Yeah. All right, here we go. Take 57. Thank you for joining and viewing this recording of a webinar presentation for Accessible Canada, Accessible World, presented by the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology, entitled Artificial Intelligence in the Workplace, Barriers and Benefits. My name is Josh Christianson. I'm a senior specialist with the Cadmus Group and team member on PEAT, the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy, and we work to really foster collaborations in the technology space with a variety of folks, really almost anyone, anything that's into building inclusive workplaces regarding technology. So I'll give some contact information later. Please be sure and reach out if you are interested in collaborating. Our mission is to build a future where new and emerging technologies are accessible to the workforce by design from the beginning. So let's jump in here. Some of the topics we're going to cover today: return on investment as it relates to inclusion, background on artificial intelligence in the workplace, and really we'll spotlight and talk about hiring as it relates to artificial intelligence. And there's going to be a variety of resources at the end. So I know this deck may not be live and accessible with the links, but I know we've uploaded some on the server for the Accessible Canada conference that will have links that you can click and use. So please check that out. All right, so first and foremost, always like to highlight the benefits of disability inclusion and really be sure and underline to people and employers especially that hiring people with disabilities is not a charity or a nice thing to do or a social value. I mean, it is all those things, but that's not the reason you should do it. It really is a bottom line benefit. And so talking about the return on investment as it relates to disability inclusion, there's a quote here from Accenture, the company Accenture that worked with Disability In and the AAPD, American Association of People with Disabilities, to put together some reports as it relates to big companies, Fortune 500 companies, and how they rank on a disability index regarding inclusion. And so basically, the higher they rank, the more correlation and connection there is to financial success. So this quote from the report says, specifically, companies that have led on key disability inclusion criteria during that time have realized 1.6 times more revenue, 2.6 times more net income, and 2 times more economic profit than other participants in Disability In's annual benchmark survey. So there are some bar graphs to the right that just reiterate and demonstrate those benefits. But in short, I think important to remember, we're talking real bottom line. Those people that are open and thinking about inclusion and equity, especially as it relates to disability, are going to have more diverse teams and are going to be more open to lots of underrepresented groups and therefore perform better. So please keep that in mind as we go forward in talking about some of the challenges as it relates to AI and hiring. Very important that you don't miss good talent and hinder yourself, your company, from hiring people with disabilities because that there are some unfair issues related to AI, and we'll get into some of that. So first, let's talk a little bit about the background as it relates to artificial intelligence in the workplace. I think we all know how fast it's been growing. We see it listed all the time, hear it, people talking about it at every conference, AI, AI, AI. And there are some challenges related to the speed of its use. Also, the speed is not going to slow down. It may only get faster. So these are things to be mindful of, not just now, but going forward. But one is that the speed of AI adoption and use just outpaces any standards, guidelines, regulatory policy structures that can be put in place by governing entities to make sure that it's equitable and fair. And so that's an issue related. We've seen that in accessible technology. People have figured out ways to come up with structures that kind of overarching that can ensure fairness even as the technology rapidly changes. And that's something we're going to need to look at and are looking at and doing as it relates to AI adoption. AI workplace tools are already in the market for sure. They are there, and they haven't been necessarily held to standards or criteria. They haven't met any independent testing criteria, even though we know that there are many risks, problems, challenges as it relates to fairness, as it relates to discrimination that folks have identified when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence. And, these tools are not designed with equity in mind. And any tool, I should say, most aren't. And any tools that aren't can really lead to discriminatory practices against all underrepresented groups, but especially people with disabilities. And because of the speed and strengths of artificial intelligence, because of some of the perceived benefits, it really has the unfortunate opportunity and ability to discriminate at a higher rate. And so we need to think about designing things with equity from the beginning to ensure they're beneficial to us. Let's talk a little about AI in the workplace. One is that there's a lot of artificial intelligence that I want to be clear that will focus a lot on barriers, problems, unfairness, inequity that are great, that are a huge benefit to employers, to workers, to people with disabilities for sure. And so we'll talk about that in the workplace when it assists human beings, where AI assists human beings. And there's some pictures here on the left that aren't that demonstrate kind of how they can be used. The first one is around communication, and it shows a woman using sign language and kind of has nodes and electric things demonstrating that some artificial intelligence is tracking her movements to translate and understand American Sign Language. So one way is communication, right? So speech recognition, transcription, you might be using closed captions right now. Speech to text, it really is an amazing tool that has helped in many ways as it relates to communication. The next shows a picture, split screen. There's someone, looks like they're in their home office, and then there's the other screen is people in the office around a meeting table. And it's talking about collaboration. I mean, we are, whether it's in person, hybrid, virtual, increasingly, there are settings in which we need to collaborate, and artificial intelligence can really help with a variety of those tools, platforms, websites we may use. There's collaborative documents, notes, comments, follow-ups, many tools that are driven to be kind of assistance along with collaborative platforms are driven by AI. Also assistive technology. So there are a variety of ways that AI can work with accommodations, with computer vision. It lists here one example being Seen AI, if anyone's aware of that. It's a very cool tool you could look up and check out. And the variety of multimodal communication tools that AI really helps with assistive technology, integrating it to other uses to ensure that the broadest number of people can really utilize it. So it says here AI can be used to assist humans, but also be used to assess humans. And so that's what we want to look at, because regardless, AI can open up a lot of possibilities, and they can either exacerbate or introduce new risks or harms, or we can try to get ahead of that. And that's a lot what we're going to talk about today. So in the workplace, when it's used for assessment, one is around in recruiting and hiring, and it shows someone just kind of with their laptop there. Job matching, resumes, just dealing with the horde of data and information that may be submitted during a job, during the job application process, can really help and be used to screen and cut down and try to find matches. Algorithmic interviews, applicant testing, many ways AI is used during an interview to assess and then also test people. Under surveillance, often a negative term, but companies increasingly use it to track productivity. And so whether it's using a mouse or they track the eye gaze of individuals, how often they're using the keyboard, there's a variety of ways that often used to surveil employees. And this is really called ability-based monitoring. And so because we know people will access and use technology differently, say you're testing like how often they move the mouse, but the person doesn't use the mouse to access technology. Obviously, that could be problematic as it would show them not being productive. Lastly, it shows training. There's a picture there of somebody with a virtual reality kind of XR headset on, doing some kind of training, which is increasingly common. But so, whether it's AI using to like complete documentation or job simulations like this picture shows in virtual reality, or what we call XR at PEAT, and lots of resources related to that you could find on our site. Or personalizing different training. AI can be used to make training in the workplace possible, more detailed, etc. And so, but it's also training, it's assessing as it's being used. All right, so let's look at how AI is utilized with hiring technologies in general, and talk about some of the bias involved and some of the major problems that kind of build on each other when you look at using AI-based technologies to come to hiring. Number one, data on employees is oftentimes flawed. Anyone who's worked with data pre-AI and tried to sort and categorize things knows that it can be problematic how people input it. Maybe it's not consistent or clean data, as it's often called. And that's an issue ongoing, but is exacerbated when we have a machine basically crunching that data and looking at things and kicking things out as it goes. And so, we don't have great data on employees. If that's being used, that's a pause and a case for potential discrimination from the beginning. One of the most important, I think, is like just the basis of artificial intelligence. It wants to take shortcuts whenever possible. That's part of the power of it, its ability to take massive amounts of data and really distill important information from it. But as it does that, what it does is it really kicks out things that it doesn't want to use, that are outliers, that it sees as superfluous, that it doesn't want to use when it's looking at all this data. And we know that can be problematic, especially for people with disabilities. They are outliers oftentimes by nature and the way they work. They might utilize different tools or access things differently or present differently. And so they may be an outlier and then be booted out of the data set to begin with as AI tools are making decisions. And so, it's looking for easy correlations in data. It wants to make things quick and easy when it's sorting and training the data. And that can be problematic when people aren't the norm or aren't behaving, working in ways that are like the majority of people. And if AI is going to kick out that data, well, suddenly lots of people with disabilities or other underrepresented groups are just going to be not included in the data sets it's using. Also, those algorithms are programmed, they're designed, and they can reflect the bias of the people who design it. So, there's lots to uncover and talk about when we talk about implicit bias or explicit bias. But, if you have a certain type of a class of people that are designing a technology, that's increasing your chances of getting some kind of bias in there that will be inequitable, that will discriminate against other groups. So we already know there's lots of issues around kind of diversity and inclusion as it comes to technology development. And this is problematic to begin with, but as we develop artificial intelligence, as we train the algorithms, as we set the parameters, increasingly problematic and troublesome. Also, many vendors that create these products, they really think of how it's designed and developed are proprietary. They don't want to share what they did, how they did it. And, that makes it really tough for anyone to understand, is it fair? Is it just how they set it up? It can be impossible to know what those kind of parameters are and how the algorithms are functioning, which, again, problematic for reasons listed above. And if they're not sharing and transparent about how it works, a whole host of issues can come into play. And we won't go into details about black boxes, white boxes, different ways that AI makes decisions in this presentation, but the resources I share with you from PEAT will have information on that. All right, so PEAT often gets together and does what we call think tanks, basically large stakeholder engagements. We get people from with a variety of experiences from across sectors, industries, experiences to come together and talk about an issue. And we did this in April 2023 in conjunction with NIST, National Institute for Standard and Technology here in the United States, to talk about specifically AI and hiring. And you can click the link when you get the deck that's downloaded from the file. You probably can't click it here. You can click the link at the bottom to get the full report. Here are some of the top takeaways that came out of this large meeting. One is involve people with disabilities in technology design and use. That's basic. That goes for any technology design use outside of artificial intelligence, but we really need to ensure that people with diverse lived experiences are involved, that they have touch points at different stages, and provide human oversight and a diversity of human oversight. And you want to consider who is not in the room and figure out ways to include their input, to include them in the development design, to ensure that you won't have areas that you just missed because you weren't aware of that experience or that use. So make sure that people with disabilities are involved in use. Second is sharing risk management duties across organizations. AI is so fast in its growth. Computer processing ability is so fast in its growth, and it's going to continue to be so. Who is kind of in charge and oversight needs to be a variety of folks. So you can't expect just the vendors to do it or just employers to do it, or just even policymakers and regulators to make sure that they are aware and making sure that, problems aren't existing and AI is just fair. It's going to require lots of organizations, and it's going to require lots of individuals within those organizations. Third is to notify end users about AI tools and hold organizations accountable. Basically, if you're using them, let people know. Offer some plain language around like where it's being used, how it's being used. You can even highlight the potential barriers or difficulties to let people know, and ideally allow people to opt out and to choose. But really being transparent about how and where and why you're using AI is important. And lastly, staff at all levels need to support a culture of AI fairness. I said lots of organizations need to be aware of this. Well, lots of individuals within an organization need to be aware of that. When a company kind of adopts AI hiring tools, it can't just check a box and consider it inclusive and then move forward and keep going. The AI is going to grow. It's going to get better and stronger. They maybe make changes as it does. And we really need people across an organization, leadership, staff, need to champion fairness and establish processes for continually evaluating their use. Check-ins, benchmarks, and each organization is going to have to figure out the best way for them to do that. All right, we want to highlight a few disability-led innovations, individuals with disabilities who are leading innovations and discussions and development of artificial intelligence as it relates to hiring practices. And so forgive me if I'm butchering the names here. I have not worked directly with these people myself, but it has a picture of John Robinson from the organization Our Ability. There's Guy Tonye from Zammo.ai, ZAMMO.ai. Ross Barchacki from Inclusively, which is a hiring platform focused on disability, and Jalika Kumar from Mentra. All of these folks are people in this space that are working on designing, developing, assessing, evaluating artificial intelligence as it used in hiring practices, and they have disabilities, and we want to encourage you to check out the work that they do. All right, here's a little 5-step process. It's a graph that shows kind of 5 columns that really is some keys to mitigating bias in artificial intelligence and hiring tools. So number 1 is ask before you buy. So when you're working with a vendor, it's really important that you try to help them be as transparent as possible when you're procuring technology, asking questions, and I'll share a resource later. Pete has some guides on questions to ask around AI hiring tools. Number 2, always include humans. We talked about that, and specifically humans with different experiences and backgrounds. AI-enabled tools are great, and they're designed to simplify things, make things faster, super, but also they're not meant to replace humans, or if they are, that's going to be problematic. So we're saying humans need to be included at different stages, at check-ins, to ensure that fairness is happening. 3, be transparent with stakeholders. We talked about this a little before. So notifying candidates when AI is being used, describing how it works, telling them about limitations, problems maybe, and again, possibly opting out is a great way to mitigate bias. Number 4 is focusing on accessibility. So we feel that way at PEAT around every technology. I think most people viewing this probably do, but it's increasingly important and true when it comes to artificial intelligence and things that are developed and designed for that. Number 5 is address systemic barriers. So, we talked about the innovators that work on this. They speak strongly about the importance of really just being transparent and talking about systemic barriers as it relates to recruiting and hiring, specifically around AI. Just being clear around the limitations and the potential there. So those are good ways to mitigate bias. Here we're moving down to some resources. I told you we would share some. And so these hyperlinks, if you get the deck, will all be active and you can check them out. We have a real simple kind of checklist for beginners as it relates to inclusive AI. Also, it shows down below the ask before you buy, which is a great tool around procurement. So if you're looking to buy from a vendor, what do you need to ask? What do you need to know? What do you need to learn to ensure that it's an inclusive, great kind of guide for that. We also have some podcasts around AI. There's the full report and a resource library that aren't just PEAT resources, but across the board that you can get. So I encourage you to check that out. Encourage you to check PEAT out in general. The site is www.peatworks.org, PEATworks.org. And then also you can sign up for our newsletter. We do not sell data. We will not go to any artificial intelligence. Our newsletters come out, I think, about every 2 months. You can follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn. The links are here on Twitter, or I guess it's on X now, at PeatWorks. Or there's a link here where you can just email us directly and send us a message and we will follow up. I'm not going to go into all these other last ones, but here are a ton of resources related to U.S. federal policy, regulatory standards related to non-discrimination AI and hiring technology. So, whether it's kind of the White House stance on it and their Office of Science and Technology, federal agencies, or I mentioned NIST earlier that we're working with, National Institute for Standards and Technology, lots of information around policy. Finally, we are working with NIST, so check back to our website soon because there will be some new frameworks and how to manage risk as it relates to AI. So thank you for joining. Check out PEAT's website, and I hope I see some of you at the conference.